Hey, I'm the Kinky Poly Atheist, and this YouTube channel is devoted to the sexual revolution. So on this channel, we're going to be talking about not only just sex, but the relationships that come with it, the emotions that come with it, all of the interesting ways you can do it, all of the things that society drops on us because of it. Things like guilt and shame and thinking that sex is bad or has to be done a certain way, or there are things that are taboo. But the point here is to talk about it, to have the conversation. I don't know about you, but when I grew up, no one talked to me about these things. And the talks that I did get were very clinical. Like maybe I would get something like a teacher or something who was tasked the assignment of teaching a bunch of teenagers how sex worked. Or maybe I would get some friends who talked about their experiences when they were just kids figuring it out for themselves, which that's a recipe for disaster. What I don't get is why is it such a secret? Why can't we just be open and honest about the things that we like and don't like? And why can't we share that with other people, especially the people we care about most? So if you've ever been in a spot where you felt like you were a little bit tied up sexually, or there was something you want that you didn't think you were allowed to ask for or didn't know how to ask, this channel's for you. This channel is for people who are curious about exploring their own basically sexual fantasies and reaching for their sexual freedom. Again, I'm committed to being open and honest about sex and sexuality, and I'm committed to go finding all the answers around things like kinky relationships, how they work, how you negotiate them, how do you have relationships with other people? What if you're with somebody who wants to try something that you're not into? How can you permission them to go try it with someone else? What if you're that person who wants to try something and you need to be permissioned to go try it with someone else? How do you do all those things ethically? How do you get consent? There's so many facets of this topic of sexual freedom because we have been so mentally and emotionally tied up by our society. You can have amazing, amazing encounters, and there's no reason to have any sorts of shame or blame around any of that. You can do it safely, you can do it consensually, you can do it with minimal to no fear of contracting some kind of sexual transmitted infection. You can also be responsible enough to do it in ways that won't create pregnancy and things like that. So if you're curious and you have questions for me or my communities, then I'm happy to be your liaison. Email me your questions. You can send them to ask@kinkypolyatheist.com. And as long as you're respectful, I'm going to answer them. If you're disrespectful, I'm just going to ignore you. So I'm sure the first question you have is, am I trying to turn you into a kinky poly atheist? And the answer is no, not even close. The reason this channel is called Kinky Poly Atheist is because that's me. I'm describing myself. I happen to be kinky. I happen to be poly and I happen to be atheist. And I'm going to explain what that means in a second here. But I'm telling you, this is me. I'm permissioning you to ask me anything. What does it mean for me to say I am a kinky poly atheist? Well, kinky is basically saying that not only do I like sex, but I like playful sex. And I like lots of different styles, and I like to bring things with me. There's toys and emotions and role playing, and there's so many ways that you can have an amazing time in the bedroom. Poly describes a relationship style. So most people are familiar with something called monogamy. Poly is short for polyamory, which means that I believe that you are allowed to love as many people as you want. And if you choose to love one person and you choose to be committed to that one person in every way, including sexual relationships, awesome. I'm going to be the first to congratulate you. I'm also going to say that there are other ways to do it. I happen to be poly. I date multiple people, and I expect each of those people to feel free to date other people. So what does poly mean when I say that I'm poly? So poly is short for polyamory. Finally, I'm an atheist. And it took me a while to get there. It took me about 35 years to break out of religion completely. I grew up Roman Catholic in New York, so there was a lot of Roman Catholic and Jewish influences around me. I chose to opt out early. I chose spiritual but not religious. And I stuck with that for a very long time. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized I was basically hiding from something. I spent about a year really digging into what does it mean to believe in a religion, in a God, What does it mean to not believe? What does it mean to demand evidence? What does it mean to have faith? What I found for me was atheism. What I found was a love for the world as it is, a love for reality-based thinking, a love for the scientific method, a love for my fellow humans, a love for life. When you realize there's not an afterlife, you want to live this life to its fullest. You want to experience everything. Which comes right back to why I named the channel Kinky Poly Atheist, because it describes me. I am here to live life to the fullest. So while we're talking about it, Kinky Poly and Atheist very specifically talk about 3 different types of sexuality and relationships. Kinky talks about the physical stuff, right? So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what does it actually look like? What is it physically, what's involved with being kinky, with being poly? Poly involves relationships. So we're going to talk about all the emotional side. Emotionally, how do you interact with more than one person that you love? Someone that you have a deep enough connection to that you actually sleep with them and someone else. I know a lot of people can't wrap their mind around that, and it's okay. But I'm happy to talk about my experiences and share them with you. And maybe you'll get to see it from my point of view and still say, you know what? That's neat, but I'm going to opt out. I like monogamy. Totally fine. Totally fine. Finally, atheist is an important part of this channel because it is all about thinking. It is all about walking through logical things and coming to real conclusions. I found that I personally was struggling and almost drowning under a lot of things that were put in my head when I was a kid that I didn't actually know how to navigate out of. It's almost like someone put a maze in my head and I'm somewhere in there trying to find my way out. I'm trying to find what's real and what's not. And that's a really tricky question, especially when it comes to things like religion and emotions and imagination. So I'm going to dedicate part of this channel to really taking a realistic look, a reality-based check on what we're doing, why we're doing it, is it good, is it bad, what is good and bad, and just the philosophies behind all of that stuff. So to recap on that, I am someone who believes in being open, being in consensual, ethical, non-monogamy, which means I have multiple relationships. I believe in having fun, amazing, free, sexy, playful times. And I also believe in basing everything I do in reality. My 2 driving factors are the golden rule and the scientific method. So you're going to hear me come back to that many, many times. Finally, I made this channel to be your liaison. I made this channel because there are so many people out there who have heard a little bit about our communities, have heard a little bit about kinky, have heard a little bit about, open relationships, and maybe heard a little bit about atheism, but are afraid or don't know have anyone they can talk to that they trust with being kind and curious with. So I want to be your liaison to these 3 communities. And the reason why is because I want everyone to be sexually free. So feel free to get curious, send me questions. Email ask@kinkypolyatheist.com, and I am happy to answer your questions. I'm committed to also being the best example of my communities, of the kinky community, of the poly community, and of the atheist community. So, I'm the Kinky Poly Atheist. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the Sexual Revolution, and ask me anything. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can follow all the wonderful questions. I highly recommend taking a browse through my various videos to see if there's anything that jumps out at you. Maybe start there. Start with the one thing that is just calling to you and listen to somebody talk about it thoroughly and openly, and then ask more questions. The more you guys dig, the more you guys ask me, the more I can give, and I'm here to give. So, I'll catch you later, and enjoy the channel.